All right. Well, welcome to a very special episode. This is basically NFL Film School. And as you all know, John used to take us through the film and show us what happened. That's John's thumb, and that is his computer. And John would take us through the film of games and tell us what happened, what went wrong, what went right for the Bengals. Well, now we have a very interesting situation, which is the Bengals have a young head coach from a very successful offense who was brought in to bring some of that success to Cincinnati. So, John is going to tell us what the Zac Taylor offense will look like, how it will function with the Bengals personnel, how successful they can be, and basically why we should expect a big dramatic jump in production from our great players like AJ Green and Tyler Boyd and so forth. So, John, I know that what are we going to see in this first clip here?
Right. So this is from, I believe, week 8 against the Packers. Rams were home. We got a 1st and 10, ball at their own 34-yard line. And this is the first example of just because you talk about a jump in production, right? Because the Rams were like out of this world in terms of offensive production. And honestly, they didn't really do anything that special or anything that unorthodox that your typical play caller wouldn't be able to conjure up. And that's why I think this is critical, because Zac Taylor was obviously working close with Sean McVay. He's got exposure to a lot of these simplistic concepts that the Rams, now this is the crucial factor here, they were extremely consistent in their approach. They didn't deviate a lot from what really worked for them. And once they got in the groove and when the personnel was healthy, things started to work. So this first example is kind of similar to what the Bengals also do well with their combination of Andy Dalton and AJ Green. But there's some twists in here that obviously the Rams have capitalized during the last couple seasons with Jared Goff in this offense. So first thing I want you guys to notice is how condensed the formation is and how tight it is. And this basically, essentially, if you have 3 receivers on the field, they're all in that tight slot formation alignment, and that gives them options of different types of releases against the cornerbacks. See, if they're not trapped on the boundary, then they don't have to release inside or whatever, and that kind of helps out the receivers in itself, and it kind of helps out the main target of this play, Brandon Cooks here. And so we have 11 personnel, everyone's playing tight to the offensive line here, and we're going to do basically the 2 main concepts that almost every Rams completed pass had, and that's jet motion, play action, right? And that this is something that the Rams just feed it off of with Jared Goff. So we have jet motion initially across the line of scrimmage to confirm that the Packers are playing man coverage. And as you see here, you have 2 cornerbacks in this tight area going up against these 2 receivers. The motion takes away this cornerback, gives Brandon Cooks a one-on-one situation on the outside. Goff sees man coverage. But the jet motion with the play action sinks all the linebackers in, sinks the pass rush in, gives Goff just enough time. And this is an anticipation throw. This is just a little bang post route over the middle, and we're going to get to see a little bit better view on the end zone angle here. So, right, we got jet motion. Play action sucks all the linebackers in. At the middle of the field, wide open in this general area. All Clinton Dix is already sucked in a little bit too far to even have an effect on this pass. Puts his hands up to no avail. That's a throwing window for Goff to just kind of rotate his head back towards his primary target. Right as Cooks is making that break towards the inside, the ball's getting out. And this is just creating space for your playmakers with just a couple extra variables that, honestly, again, the Rams just did so often, because it's not a matter of setting these aspects up. It's just doing them so consistently because they always tend to work, because it's always something that the defense has to fear. That jet motion receiver going across the line of scrimmage, always have to account for the ball getting handed off to them. And the play action, no matter how much you set up the run, will always end up sucking in the linebackers to some degree to create that extra space over the middle. And again, and that post route that we saw from Cooks, it's something that Andy Dalton and AJ Green succeed on a very consistent basis as well.
Yeah. I mean, when I'm looking at that play, it looked like, very much like Andy Dalton getting the ball out of his hands so quickly. It looks like that's one of the strengths of him, and that kind of feeds into the whole. Maybe Zac Taylor is being honest about this one thing, that he actually is excited to work with Andy Dalton. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know He's such a politician. But we talked about the jet motion. You and I were talking about before the show. John Ross is a classic jet motion type, but he's not as complete of a receiver as a Brandon Cooks. But what you think? Do you think he can be that in sync for these type
Well,
of
I mean,
plays?
you can have anybody running that jet motion as long as there's the threat of the ball getting handed off. And obviously, Ross is the fastest guy that they have, so he could do the most damage getting the ball. And like in this case, like if he gets the ball right there, he has to beat this edge defender, but he's obviously accounting for the rest of the play. Ross is like the ideal guy for you to have, but you could do it with Tyler Boyd, you could do it with like an Alex Erickson. It doesn't really matter who it ends up being, but you go back to that getting the ball out quickly. And this is how like Goff managed to produce so well, is that these plays are just pre-designed from the snap, from pre-snap. He knows where, how far back he has to drop, how far back his drop back has to be, when the ball has to be out, and the play action, all that timing kind of coincides with how the play is supposed to go. And this is all anticipation based, timing based, and that's the beauty of scheming guys open with play action.
Yeah, I like it. I think
So and kind of deviating from that, so we had Goff getting the ball out quickly, with under 3 seconds. Now we're going to have Goff kind of hold the ball a little bit longer as he sets up one of his playmakers here. So again, we have tight splits. No one outside of the numbers here. Basically 3 slots, almost the same formation, almost the same kind of concept here. So again, play action off wide zone. You have that tight end kind of wrapping around in pass protection, but watch the linebackers sink in, because they have to account for Todd Gurley, and this is the Bengals Joe Mixon here. Linebackers all kind of go up, kind of creep towards the line of scrimmage. You have the safety playing, Akers back, and then look at that. Let's get the cup. Not a burner, but again, he's not going to beat those fast corners on the outside. But if you get him screaming across the middle against an Eric Kendricks who is too preoccupied with, okay, is he going to hand the ball off? Okay, I'm out of my depth here. Now he's got to step on him. All Goff has to do is just drop it in perfectly.
Well, yeah, but also the interior offensive line was holding up pretty decently there.
Right.
Do you think, we can do that kind of thing? That kind of give Dalton that kind of time?
Well, that's the other beauty of play action, though, right? Because with the threat of the run, you have defensive linemen kind of not in pass rushing mode, right? They're trying to just stay in their gaps. They're trying to, stay in their fits, if you will. And they're not exactly attacking so much as a pass rusher, but just as holding their ground. And then that gives the offensive lineman that extra advantage, that extra couple seconds to kind of get their hands set and, give them an ample opportunity to at least win the rep for as long as they need to. Because here Goff kind of looks towards his left here to get that safety occupied just long enough. You have linebackers then starting to get back into their depth. But at this point, I mean, like this is a route combination, or excuse me, this is a route concept that the Bengals could utilize with either John Ross or Tyler Boyd to ample success. The ability to get your explosive guys going over the middle up against the linebacker, who's again already kind of out of the play a little bit from the threat of the run and the play action. This is something that they could have easily done, and this is something that Zac Taylor can easily do with either Ross or Boyd.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I could see that working. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, like you've been talking about. So, in addition to personnel, we have problem scheming guys open. I mean, we've been blessed with AJ Green, a guy you don't even if you don't scheme him open, he's going to find a way to make plays. But if we had more creativity and nuance to our offense, who knows? And one thing that I like to say is that Zac Taylor's never had a receiver, clear number one receiver like AJ Green.
No.
There's only a handful of them in the league, so I think we might see some incredible production from him this year.
All right, so now we're against the Lions, and not every pass play was under center play action. Sometimes McVay and that offense did spread it out in shotgun. Here we have just a 2x2 on pre-snap, and as we can see, corners. It looks like man coverage from initially, but Goff is going to have Brandon Cooks here motion across. You have that. I believe it's a third safety. Could just be just a slot cornerback, but he's going to trail him over the formation, right? And now notice these two guys down below here on the bottom. They're going to run just a little 5-yard ins each to make sure that no cornerback is going to occupy the space because we're going to have a deep corner out here, and the line safeties, I believe, are going to shift from a too high look to, I think, one guy dropping down. You're going to have just a single high safety patrolling this area, and then Goff is going to be able to hold that safety. So by the time Cooks is breaking towards the outside here, or towards the corner here, he's going to have room, and the safety's not going to have enough time to make up this ground. But this is another example of where John Ross can succeed in the slot. He doesn't have to just be on the outside to burn those fast corners. If you can get him off coverage, already with outside leverage against this cornerback here, you're going to have ample success because athletically Ross is just as athletic as Brandon Cooks.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen Goff have to use a lot of downfield arm strength. Like, I mean, yeah, he's been throwing downfield, but they're not incredibly
No,
powerful throws. Yeah.
there are no tight
Right,
windows
right,
that Goff needed to hit.
right, which is good for Andy Dalton. It's good that I mean, I don't know, but he does have it in him, those 15, 20 yarders sometimes, the tight throws, but. Last year, actually, early in the year, he was having his best year. Do you remember that, John? Like first 4 or 5 games. Yeah.
Yeah, and
he was making some throws that were really impressive. But
this kind of goes without saying, but the Rams' offensive line was fantastic. We all know who this left tackle is, but when you have
he's aging. He's aging, not really valuable. but some people think it's kind of old.
But when you're able to get wear out combinations that get guys open 2-3 seconds after the play, you don't need offensive line. You can afford to have offensive linemen kind of have a couple faulty reps if the ball's getting out so quickly. And Goff did a great job of making sure that ball got out, but also McVay called plays that were able to scheme guys open all the time. So
yeah, I mean that's the thing, is the whole joke about Goff always having the headset until the last second, and then he's like, well, that is Andy Dalton. I mean, just give him something clear cut to do, and he'll do it. That's where he's at his best. Is just giving him assignments, and if the coach can scheme guys open and call the right play, Dalton can execute.
All right, so
you didn't say you agree.
We're not going to get too deep in Dalton. So going beyond just the passing game, because I think there's a direct comparison to be made with Todd Gurley and Joe Mixon, at least athletically. In terms of athleticism, in terms of running ability, I think there are similarities there. I know Le'Veon Bell gets used a lot with Mixon, but I think Gurley might be a more apt comparison. Now Gurley is like the all pro running back or whatever, so it's kind of high praise. But in terms of just what they can do, in a similar situation, I think there are some dots to be connected here. And there's not much to the Rams running game. It's just basically outside zone, and they had the personnel on the offensive line to do this. But when you're looking at the Bengals, when instead of the Rams interior, when you have guys like Billy Price and potentially Alex Redmond for another year, or maybe even Bobby Hart, when you don't have guys who succeed so on the zone scheme, how are they going to be able to win on those reach blocks that the Rams were always comfortable doing, because they just didn't have to worry about their guys not getting those angles on those far reaches against those wide techs. So this is a play that I think really showcases that even if like the Rams had the personnel to just run through your throat, they still made it easy on their offensive line and Gurley all the same. So they're going up against a 7-man box here against the Broncos, a team that the Bengals didn't really have success running the ball against later in the year. And they're going to, again, jet motion, freezes the linebackers just long enough, even freezes the defensive lineman, so these reach blocks can be succeeded, so they can get out in front, so they can seal him out. As we can see, the edge defender here, the force player here, he's basically taken out. It's basically now a 6-man box against 6 blockers for the Rams. Ample space at the point of attack for Gurley to explode, and this can be Joe Mixon. Like we've seen Joe Mixon run like this.
We have.
The acceleration again in the open field, and then just the being 220 pounds, running 4.5. That's a lot of force to take down the open field, and as we can see, Gurley had no trouble running through these guys. But like this is a much better angle. Right as the jet motion begins, you have the linebackers already accounting for it. You have them going against the flow of the play, right? And then you have your guard here. I think this is Austin Blythe, who's a really good player in his zone. taking on Domata Peko, who's kind of stopping in his tracks a little bit because of the threat of the ball getting handed off to him. Because these guys have to haul ass to eventually catch up with in case the jet motion guy gets the ball. Then you have front side guys taking care of them. They already have them sealed out. You have the left guard here moving up to the second level, who against this cornerback who's kind of freezing in his space. And then I believe that's the right tackle, Havenstein, who has a much better angle to get and seal off this linebacker simply because of the threat of the jet motion. This is why they did it so constantly. Even if they rarely handed the ball off, you always, as a defender in the box, you always have to account for that, because the one time that they do, it can burn you.
Yeah. I mean, there was I will get a little bit off topic, but there was talk of I think Jim Turner talking about Trey Hopkins maybe playing center. I mean, he was insinuating that, and then maybe Price moving to guard.
I would like that. I would like that for both players. I think Hopkins is a better center than he is a guard, and I think Price can develop into a better guard than he is a center. I think Price can still carve out a career at center, but if they were to do right by him to get him going, in the best direction possible, I think moving him to guard as quickly as possible would be the correct move, as long as they keep him there and not pancake him or flip him back and forth, because that would not do well for his development.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of questions to be had with the Bengals offensive line, and they're not the Rams caliber. They need to add bodies there, but just simple things like that can go a long way into just getting production. The talent doesn't have to be equal to the Rams if you want to get similar production. I'll say that.
Yeah,
and now,
I agree. Yeah.
Just one more example of kind of the relationship between the run and the pass. We have, I think this is the first play out of halftime of this game. 1st and 10. No jet motion this time, just simple outside zone. Broncos, I think, what was this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, eighth man kind of creeping down. Like, they're all over this run, right? Or no, we do have a jet motion here, but it doesn't really do much, right? The linebackers they stay disciplined. They don't really account for it, because I think they have an extra force player on the outside here to kind of take advantage, to kind of help it out. And it's just a simple 5-yard gain, nothing special. The blocking does about as well as it could. There's just not much room for Gurley to accelerate into the open field. It's whatever.
Right.
The Rams,
yeah.
So they end up running on 2nd and 5, and now we have a 3rd and 1. For 16 years, we would assume this would be a run under Marvin Lewis, right?
Right.
Jet motion, play action, linebackers sink down, easy yards over the middle.
Yeah, and this is what you're talking about. This is their personnel, their formations for passing and running are so similar. And you were saying the jet motion is constantly used in both run and pass and whatnot.
And when Todd Gurley was on the field, because this is Todd Gurley here, whenever Goff went straight back to hand the ball off, it was almost always play action. And when he was kind of going to hand the ball off into like a more of a stretch run, more of an outside zone run, it was less predictable. It could have been a run, it could have been play action, but almost always Gurley never had inside zone. He rarely had inside zone carries because it just didn't fit him as a player. He does a lot better running horizontally and then vertically, and that's similar to Joe Mixon as well. And it was something that could have tipped off the defense a little bit, but when you do it so well, because play action, no matter how many times you run it or how many times you run the ball before you do it, it works. Because like look at this linebacker here. He goes up to attack. I believe this is. I want to say this is the tight end. It could be a receiver. I think it's Josh Reynolds maybe, because at this point he doesn't. At this point he has to account for the ball getting handed off to Gurley here. So he goes up to attack him, to kind of press him to get closer to make a play on the ball. But Goff still has the ball, and he doesn't realize it until it's too late. Now there's no one left to guard him, because the guy behind the linebacker, he's watching this whole thing as well, and he realizes, oh crap, there's so much space for me to cover here to catch up, and it's too late. It's an easy 3rd and 1 conversion. Yeah, I want to get a better example of here. I mean, this play is stuffed, right? Because if that ball is handed off, but McVay and his crew are smarter than that.
Well, you say McVay, So I mean, that's a question I have. Is this Zac Taylor's identity? Like at UC, was this when the Dolphins, he was the OC for a short period of time. Do we know this is going to be his identity?
Well, I think that's the whole point of coaching trees, right? Because Doug Peterson wasn't always with Andy Reid before he went to the Eagles, but a lot of the things that he learned from Andy Reid, that's the basis of who he is as a coach now. And like Zac Taylor doesn't have a lot of experience as a coach. I think this is only his 11th year, but the recent examples or the recent history that he has is with McVay, and obviously that's where he was on the team that found the most success. So I think I think his identity is always going to evolve, or his identity has evolved to the point where a lot of I think what he's going to do is going to be based around the things we saw in the past couple of years because it's successful. It fits the flow of how the game is evolving today, and I think he's going to have his own little twist on it because, as I said, the combine he's not Sean McVay, but I think he realizes that it would be foolish not to implement similar concepts like this. And a lot of these are like rosy examples. This is like best case scenarios, and it's not always going to work as simple as this because at the end of at certain points, personnel does matter, and the Bengals don't have exactly the offensive talent that the Rams do at this moment. But they're close in some areas, and I think they can over the next couple seasons build a unit similar to that to run these simple concepts to a consistent, effective basis.
And so then we're assuming that Brian Callahan will be on the same page as McVay. He's going to
Right.
It's like I mean,
He's not the play caller, but I think he's going to have input in designing it. And he's also obviously his father is Bill Callahan, who implements a ton of zone blocking as well. So I think they're going to have. I think that was one of like the main points that they have similar philosophies in terms of how what you're basing your offense around. That's wide zone, outside zone, go off play action. That's something that Gary Kubiak did. That's something that Jim Turner did in Miami. Like it's all like one big like similar philosophy that I think they'll have good quality input that's similar to each other.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's great. I mean, there's just a trend in offenses now where they're playing a lot more like we used to play Madden. And
right.
It's just,
it's the millennial play callers, man.
Really, really. And I think that's a big reason why we have such a young coaching staff and why, people were kind of thinking the Marvin Lewis approach was a stale, So, yeah, we will see. I mean, the good thing is, I mean, I really do think we have a lot of. Is there more plays you want to talk about, John? Or
no, we're just running through.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I actually I'm a lot higher on our personnel, on our players than most people are. I'm not. I know the offensive line. I think it needs some tweaking. I don't think it's a mess like people think. And I look at Goff and I see a lot of the Dalton can do a lot of these things and mix in. Like I think Gurley was kind of the key to that offense to some degree, and that's why we saw the team kind of falter in the playoffs when he was injured. And
the team definitely took a step back when Cooper Kupp got hurt, but as we saw,
that's for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, but I mean, they couldn't really. They weren't the Rams without Gurley healthy.
No, they were almost better with CJ Anderson.
Well, I mean, the Super Bowl. I mean, for instance, I don't know. Yeah, I guess maybe.
If we want to talk about the Super Bowl, then we can talk about the negatives that Jared Goff and Dadio and John Sheeran is that they can't really do it on their own. But that's a topic for another time.
That is, John. That is. I wish you would stop going so negative. We're trying to be happy here, but all right. Well, John, thank you so much for this great film school session. I want to make sure that we thank our patrons for making this show possible. I'm talking about Andrew Seiler, Brian Taylor, John Harden, Michael Ford, and Tanner Guerin. That's right. We have five.
It's only four fingers.
Yeah. But five, but use my ear too, five patrons. And it's a big deal. And of course, one thing we're doing is we're putting our shows, not this one, this is too visual. We're putting our shows on iTunes and on Podbean. Just look for Sorry If I Spit When I Speak. And you can hear a slightly edited, a little bit music, and just listen on your drive to work or a school or anywhere else. And of course, Hoji is not here. He is on a spiritual journey. He's actually he's somewhere in India. I don't know where, but he will be back soon. And for John Sheeran, that's all I got, John. For John Sheeran, anything you want to add?
No. Yeah, this is good.
Yeah, yeah. John has a very important business meeting coming up soon. So for John Sheeran, I am Dadio Maktouk. Thank you so much. We will see you next time. SVT. Bye.